Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. This is Indicator Commentary. Now, there is this country of Guyana. This country is one of Caribbean nations that got its independence in 1966. Now, there is this president of Guyana, Mr. Ali, who is trying to make sense to many people concerning a lot of things. Mr. President Mohamed Infan Ali of Guyana is trying to address the United Nations in general. And his speech was not just about Guyana. It was a call for justice, fairness, and a new global partnership that gives developing nations the respect and opportunities they deserve. So, stay tuned to this channel so that you may understand why Mr. President Mohamed Ali of Guyana has been talking a lot of sense. Stay tuned, I'll be coming back with more reaction and commentary. So, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you.
Madam President, Excellencies, if it is, we all agree on ending and preventing wars. If it is, we all agree that the Security Council requires reform. If it is, we all agree that the international financial system is unfair and unjust to the developing world. And if it is, we all believe in climate, food, and energy security, then what is stopping us from acting? We will all be doomed in the court of conscience for knowing what is right while ignoring what is wrong. Madam President, of the myriad of challenges confronting our world, climate change threatens our very existence, adversely affecting development across all countries. Rising sea levels and temperatures, severe natural disasters, and shifting and extreme weather patterns disrupt agriculture and food security, threaten water supply, and displace communities. These impacts are particularly devastating for small island developing states. Each year, we make the annual pilgrimage to COP, filled with hope for tangible outcomes. And each year, we are regaled and renewed unkept promises are the order of the day. This cycle of hope, followed by disappointment, cannot continue if the Sustainable Development Goals are to be met. We must break free from this pattern of empty pledges. We must unequivocally and immediately fulfill all pledges for the sake of our planet and the future of all its inhabitants. Let me tell you about my country, Guyana, a country that is 83,000 square miles, 86% of which is tropical forests. Guyana has the second highest percentage forest cover on Earth and one of the lowest deforestation rate. Our forest stores 19.5 gigatons of carbon and sequesters more than 153 million tons annually. According to WWF, Guyana is one of the world's most important countries for biodiversity density. It straddles two of the richest biodiversity zones, the Guyana Shield and the Amazon. As a country, we are dedicated to the preservation of this vital global asset. I especially salute the indigenous peoples of Guyana, the Amerindians, who are the foremost stewards of this great natural heritage. We recognize their leadership, and 15% of all revenues earned from carbon sales are directly transferred to our indigenous communities. Madam President, even with our newfound natural resource, oil and gas, it would require less than 20% of sequestered carbon to offset our emissions at maximum output. We have preserved our biodiversity and know its value. We believe it is only fair and just that this global asset be monetized in a fair carbon market. Today, I am pleased to announce the launch of a Global Biodiversity Alliance. We will convene the first Global Biodiversity Alliance Summit in 2025, which will focus on creating a market for biodiversity credits, scaling biodiversity conservation debt swaps, accelerating biodiversity bonds, establishing a blueprint for biodiversity taxonomies, and promoting nature-positive action. We do not make this announcement by mere words. Guyana is also committed to doubling its protected areas by December 2025 and achieving the global biodiversity target of 30% by 2030. These are real solutions that Guyana is putting forward to address the global problem of biodiversity loss. We do not lecture, we lead by example without arrogance. Madam President, according to the UN Food Security and Nutrition Report, in 2023, an estimated 28.9% of the global population, 2.3 billion people, were moderately or severely food insecure. The primary causes were conflict and insecurity, extreme weather events, including those related to El Nino and climate change and economic shocks. To effectively address food insecurity, we must take more concerted action to address its root causes, reducing conflict, mitigating climate change, and enhancing food production and trade in food commodities. By prioritizing peace and climate action, we can create environments where food systems, crops, and livelihoods are not threatened by conflict and weather extremes. In turn, enhancing food production and ensuring fair and efficient trade in food commodities can reduce food insecurity. So too can the full involvement of women and youth. In Guyana's National Agricultural Strategy and Policy, at least 35% of our agro-businesses will be owned by women and 60% by young people. While I've spoken of food insecurity, the global malnutrition rates are also alarming and must be addressed. Nutritious, safe, and sufficient food are crucial to a healthy population. Madam President, the United Nations must continue to be a beacon of hope amidst a turbulent global environment. The theme of this year's assembly, and I quote, "Leaving no one behind, acting together for the advancement of peace, sustainable development, and human dignity for present and future generations," end of quote, resonates with the vision set out in the United Nations Charter. This vision demands decisive action and enlightened multilateralism. Today, we find ourselves in a world where the quest for peace is met with a defiant echo of conflict, where the promise of sustainable development is eclipsed by the dangerous specter of climate change and food insecurity, and where the dignity of millions of people is trampled upon with impunity. In Ukraine, the sovereignty and territorial integrity of a nation are being violated. Yet, decisive action by the United Nations Security Council remains fettered by the veto. Justice demands that we defend the territorial integrity of all states, large, small, powerful, and weak. Equally concerning is the conflict in Sudan, which rages on with devastating consequences for the people of that country, including famine and mass displacement. This conflict will continue to undermine efforts to achieve lasting peace and sustainable development. This Assembly must also condemn the continued oppression and persecution by the Taliban of women and girls in Afghanistan, who face not just lack of access to education and restrictions on their movements, but now even their voices cannot be heard in public. Closer to my home, CARICOM has been actively supporting a Haitian-led process for the restoration of democracy, peace, and stability in Haiti. We welcome the deployment of the UN-authorized multinational security support mission led by Kenya as a crucial step towards stabilizing the security situation. We call on the international community to urgently scale up financing for the MSS and secure its renewed authorization so that the mission can succeed. We must also address the dire humanitarian situation, where almost half of Haiti's population suffer from acute hunger, mass displacement, and women and girls are enduring brutal violence, including sexual violence. Guyana is leading CARICOM's effort in mobilizing humanitarian effort and support for Haiti. Excellencies, I'll be reaching out to you for your support. We must stay the course with our Haitian brothers and sisters in their quest for durable peace and sustainable development. The people of Haiti deserve nothing less. Madam President, peace, stability, and safety are no more imperiled than in Gaza. Guyana reiterates its strong condemnation of the October 7 attacks by Hamas on Israel. However, the collective punishment of an entire population, including the indiscriminate slaughter of civilians, most of whom are women and children, has long gone beyond the realm of self-defense. As the world watches on helplessly, Israel continues to flout its international obligations, including the orders of the ICJ and successive Security Council resolutions. Instead, the right of self-defense is being used as a weapon of mass extermination, stoking legitimate fears of genocide. No state, large or small, should feel comfortable and safe when such atrocities are allowed to continue with impunity. The war in Gaza must end now. We reiterate our demand for an immediate ceasefire and the release of all hostages and Palestinians illegally detained. Madam President, for more than 75 years, the Palestinian people have been denied their right of self-determination. We must advance the two-state solution, as this remains the only viable option for a future where Palestinians and Israelis live in peace and security. Turning to our brothers and sisters in Cuba, their right to development continues to be stymied by the economic embargo. Guyana renews its call for revocation of the embargo and the removal of Cuba from the list of state sponsors of terrorism. Madam President, the United Nations has a special responsibility for the security of small states. Small states look to multilateralism and the rule of international law to protect them from foreign aggression. Guyana is a small state that has had to contend with aggression from the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela for all 58 years of our nationhood. International law and its strict application have been our armor and our shield in our determination to protect ourselves from this aggression. We remind this August Assembly that the border between Guyana and Venezuela was fully, finally, and perfectly settled in an 1899 award by an international tribunal. Venezuela was fully represented in that tribunal, whose award it proclaimed in its own Congress and welcomed for more than 6 decades. Before reopening the issue on the eve of Guyana's independence, claiming 2/3 of our territory. This controversy, initiated by Venezuela, was submitted by Guyana to the International Court of Justice in accordance with a decision of the United Nations Secretary General and consistent with our position to settle this matter by legal and peaceful means. In 2023, in light of intensified acts of aggression by Venezuela, the ICJ issued provisional measures stating that, and I quote, pending a final decision in the case, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela shall refrain from taking any action which would modify the situation that currently prevails in the territory in dispute, whereby the Cooperative Republic of Guyana administers and exercises control over the area, end of quote. After years of refusing to participate in the proceedings of the ICJ and stating that it does not recognize the jurisdiction of the court, the Venezuelan government has now submitted a counter memorial to Guyana's submission. We welcome Venezuela's decision to participate in the court's proceedings and express the hope that Venezuela will accept the decision of the court, as Guyana has long pledged to do. I reaffirm Guyana's unwavering commitment to a peaceful resolution of this long-standing controversy in full conformity with international law and the principles set forth in the United Nations Charter. Madam President, peace, development, and human rights are pillars of the United Nations. We all aspire for a form of multilateralism that is equitable, inclusive, and ensures that no one is left behind. Women's participation in leadership in private and public sectors are integral to this. There is a growing movement in the developing world calling for the democratization of global political and economic relations. The disproportionate concentration of power favors a few powerful nations, whilst marginalizing the voices and concern of the broader international community. Developing countries are justly demanding more inclusive and representative decision-making processes in institutions and organs such as the UN Security Council, the World Bank, and the IMF. The World Trade Organization must also be reformed to ensure fairer trade for developing countries. These reforms must go beyond fair representation and ensure that the policies and practices of these institutions align with the developmental needs and aspirations of all countries. In the emerging global order, we must ensure the United Nations remains at the forefront of global governance. If multilateralism is to trump unilateralism, the UN's role as the world's foremost multilateral organization is pivotal. With the necessary resources and resolve, the UN can ensure a future of peace, sustainable development, and human dignity. The future we seek, a future where no one is left behind, demands courageous action. The UN must fulfill its role as a custodian of greater global peace, the foremost promoter of sustainable development, and an unflinching protector of human rights, human dignity, and international law. And since the UN is all of us, this body of nations, this is a collective responsibility for us all. Let us not be found wanting. Let us act together for the advancement of peace, for the achievement of sustainable development, and the preservation of human dignity, now and for generations to come. I thank you.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana.
Wow. Thank you so much for staying tuned. I believe you have heard and you have learned a lot concerning what President of Guyana is trying to tell. Now, the important moments from President Ali's powerful speech including vision for climate action, food security, peace, economic reform, and why he believes developing countries must have a stronger voice in shaping the future of the world. Now, he believes Africa and Caribbean have everything they need to build prosperous economies without depending on foreign aid. Now, the president begins by highlighting Guyana's unique role in the fight against climate change. Despite being one of the world's fastest growing economies, Guyana has preserved the overwhelming majority of its tropical rainforest. These forests absorb millions of tons of carbon dioxide every year, providing an enormous environmental benefit to the entire planet. However, President Ali argues that countries protecting these valuable ecosystems deserve fair compensation. He introduces the idea of a global biodiversity alliance that would allow nations rich in natural resources to benefit from transparent and equitable carbon markets. Rather than forcing developing countries to choose between economic growth and environmental conservation, he believes both goals can be achieved together through international cooperation and fair financial mechanisms. The president then shifts his attention to one of the world's biggest challenges, food security. He points out that hunger is not simply caused by a lack of food production. Instead, conflicts, climate change, economic instability, and unequal access to resources continue to push millions of people into food insecurity. President Ali calls for countries to work together by supporting sustainable agriculture, empowering farmers, and ensuring women and young people play central roles in agricultural development. He stresses that solving global hunger requires long-term planning instead of short-term emergency responses. Another major theme of the speech is the urgent need for peace. President Ali expresses deep concern over the devastating conflict affecting different parts of the world, including Ukraine, Sudan, and Gaza. He condemns the enormous humanitarian suffering caused by these wars and emphasizes that innocent civilians should never bear the greatest burden of political disputes. Regarding the Middle East, he supports a peaceful two-state solution as the best path toward lasting stability. Throughout his remarks, President Ali consistently argues that diplomacy, dialogue, and respect for international law must replace violence and destruction. The president also addresses Guyana's ongoing border controversy with the neighboring Venezuela. Rather than encouraging confrontation, he reaffirms Guyana's confidence in international law and its commitment to solving the dispute peacefully through the International Court of Justice. His message demonstrated that even difficult territories, disagreement can be managed through legal institutions instead of military conflict. By emphasizing the rule of law, Guyana president itself as a nation committed to stability, peace, and responsible international engagement. Perhaps the strongest part of the President Ali's speech comes when he challenges the current global financial and political system. He argues that institutions created decades ago no longer reflect today's realities. Developing countries continue to face enormous financial burden while having limited influence over decisions made by organizations such as the United Nations Security Council, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank. President Ali calls for meaningful reforms that will provide developing nations with greater representation and fairer access to financial resources. According to him, global institutions cannot remain effective if billions of people continue to be underrepresented in international decision-making. Following the speech, the video creator praises President Ali for speaking boldly and on behalf of developing nations. The creator believes that countries across Africa and the Caribbean possess abundant natural resources, talented people, and enormous economic potential. However, these advantages can only translate into lasting prosperity if governments prioritize self-reliance instead of becoming overly dependent on foreign aid. The commentary argues that true development requires investment in education, technology, manufacturing, infrastructure, and local industries. Instead of exporting raw materials and importing finished products, developing nations should create value within their own economies, generate skilled employment, and strengthen domestic industries. The creator also emphasizes that international partnership should be based on mutual respect rather than dependence. Foreign investment can be beneficial, but long-term success depends on making individual independent decisions that serve national interests while promoting sustainable growth. President Mohammed Infala Ali addresses at the United Nations serves as a powerful reminder that the voice of smaller developing nations deserved to be heard on the global stage. His message combines environmental responsibility, economic justice, peaceful diplomacy, food security, and institutional reform into a vision for a more balanced and inclusive world. Whether discussing climate change, global conflict, or international finance, his central argument remains clear. Developing countries should not simply adapt to an outdated global system. They should help reshape it. Combined with the creator's call for self-reliance and strategic investment, the overall message is one of confidence, responsibility, and determination. As global challenges continue to grow, speeches like this encourage meaningful conversation about fairness, cooperation, and the future of international development. So, if you enjoyed this summary, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts and comments on the below there. Now, let me give you a question. Do you agree that developing nations need a greater voice in global decision making? I would like to hear from you. Thank you for watching and have a nice time.